In today's video, I'm going to be doing a tutorial on Erik Satie piece that somebody recommended. Well, they didn't actually request that I play this particular piece, but they did ask me to play an Erik Satie piece, and so I decided to choose one of his more famous pieces, which is the Gnossienne #1. It's a French piece. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that name right, but what I wanted to do in today's video is not only perform the piece, which I have a video of on my channel, but I also wanted to do a tutorial on how to play the piece. It's a really cool song. It's one of my new favorites. I really love playing it. It's such a cool, soft, sad-sounding song, and it's a really, really cool piece. It really fits the rainy weather that we're having outside right now. And it's a really great piece. And so I wanted to do a video on it because even though it is a very simple piece, the time signatures are very strange. There's like 16/4 and 24/4, very strange. But the timing itself is actually quite simple, so I wanted to do a video demonstrating how to play the piece. I'm going to show you exactly what fingers to play on what chords and what notes and exactly how it works. So let's get started with that. First I'm going to show you the sheet music, and one thing I wanted to note about the sheet music is that in most of my videos I show it to you on the video, but in this case there's actually going to be a download link in the description. It'll take you to MuseScore, and then if you have a MuseScore account, if you don't, you can sign up for one. It's totally free. You can then download the version of the sheet music, the same one I'm using. So then when I talk about like the second page and the third page, it'll all line up just fine. It is a totally free download, so I just wanted to put that out there. There's going to be a sheet music download in this one, which is kind of nice. And most of my other tutorial videos, I don't have the option to do that, but in this one I do. So I just wanted to mention that as well. So if you don't like looking at it on the screen, on the computer, or phone, whatever you're watching it on, you can also go and download it and print it out for yourself at home. So I just wanted to mention that. Let's get started. Let's take a look at the sheet music here, and let me walk you through the Gnossienne by Erik Satie. So let's take a look here at the first couple of lines here of the Gnossienne by Erik Satie. Now this is a very long piece, so this video is going to be actually quite a long video, but we're just going to be taking it just like we do the very short Bach pieces that are only like a page or sometimes two. We're going to be looking at it line by line, and I'm going to just walk you through the sheet music, kind of show you what's going on, and then after this I will be showing you how to play the piece on the keyboard, and then after that I'll play through the piece pretty slowly, or at least a little bit slower than it's normally played because it is a very slow piece, and I'll be doing so with the metronome, and if you want you can even play along, which hopefully will help some of you. Now, one thing I also wanted to mention is that, as you can see here, this print of the music is a little bit pale. I guess our printer was kind of upset when it was printing it, so it came out kind of light. You can see the lines, like this bottom line is hardly there, and then a couple of the other lines are kind of hard to see. But what's kind of cool is there's actually a version of this that's free to download online. I'll be putting a link to that in the description. It's on MuseScore, and it's totally free to download. You will have to make an account with MuseScore, which is also totally free, so it's a little bit of a nuisance, but you will be able to get a version of this sheet music completely free online. So if you want to use that instead of using this video, that would be a really great idea, but perhaps you have your own version of the sheet music lying around, which would also be a really great help. But let's just jump into the first measure here, which, as you can see, is this whole first line. A couple of things to note is that we have 4 flats. We've got B flat, E flat, A flat, and D flat. And then we also have a very weird time signature here, which, as you can see, has 16/4. So basically what this means is there's 16 beats in the measure, and the quarter note is going to be getting the beat. Now, most metronomes do have a feature where you can set it so that at the beginning of each measure it plays a different sound. For example, on my metronome here, I can set it so that on every third beat it plays a different sound, like that. But most metronomes, at least the ones I have seen, won't go above like 12/8. I have a metronome in my keyboard that won't go above 12/8, and I don't know that, maybe a metronome app or something, you could program in a very specific time signature. But if you're working on this piece and you want to use a metronome, which is a good idea, just set the metronome to like 0 or 1, which basically means there won't be any special beat at the beginning of the measure. It'll all be the same sound. So this can go on forever and it won't have a different sound anywhere. And so basically just practice it with that and just kind of use your knowledge of time, time signatures to just kind of figure out the timing of the piece. Again, the quarter note is going to be getting a beat. So for example, this note here, which is a half note, is going to be getting 2 clicks of the metronome. This is a quarter rest here, so you're going to be playing this whole note on that quarter rest, and then on the second click of the metronome, you're going to be playing this half note. Then that is going to be held for 2 beats, and then you're going to play that quarter note there again, and then immediately after the quarter note, on the next click, you're going to want to play that F down there at the bottom, and so on and so forth. So it's rather simple. The time signature is rather strange and it's uncommon, but actually the timing is very simple, as you'll see here in a bit when I actually get around to playing the piece. But as you can see, we also have a lot of grace notes as well. Now these have a couple of different names. I think they're called appoggiaturas, and basically you can tell that it's a grace note by the fact that the little small note here has a slash through it. There's also a different type of note that has a similar appearance, but there's no slash through the note, and that's actually played differently. Now this is called the grace note again, and basically the little slash through this small note means that you want to play that very quickly and very briefly. So as you can see there also, that note is on the C. So when you want to play that note, you want to play the C briefly and then move to the B natural there, which is kind of the main note of that grace note, like that. When you're playing this piece, you also want to make sure that the main note, which in this case, well, it's not really the first, well, it is the first measure, but right here, the main note is the B, so you want to make sure that that B is going to be louder than the grace note, which is the C. You don't want to have that C be louder than the B, or otherwise it's not going to sound right, and it's just basically not going to sound right, even if you are playing the right notes. If the grace note's too loud, it's not going to have a good sound. We also have some more grace notes up here. We've got one on the E that goes up to the F, like so. Like that. Same basic principle. You're going to see these grace notes a lot in the sheet music. And the way you kind of play them is with two separate fingers on the same hand. So like for the E and the F up there, you're going to want to do 3 and 4. And just play the 4 immediately after playing the E very lightly. The second line here of the piece also has a few more grace notes. We have the same chord over and over again in the left hand, which is an F minor chord. It's all in the first measure of the piece, and it's all in the second measure of the piece. But then here it actually will change to a C minor chord there. And again, we have a bunch more grace notes. We've got one going from C down to B. We've got one going down from A flat to G. We've got one going from F natural to G, and so on and so forth. So we have lots and lots of grace notes in the piece. We also have some dynamics as well, which you're definitely going to want to pay attention to. We've got a forte here, which means to play this section of the measure a little bit louder than before, and then up here is a piano, which means to play it very softly. So forte means loud, piano means quiet, so you're going to want to play this part louder than the rest. And then in the third line, which we'll get to in a second, it says piano again. So let's show you that. So let's take a look here at the second two lines of the piece, which if you remember what the first two lines of the piece look like, you might be thinking that I'm showing you the exact same two lines over again, and in a way you're actually right, because the third line and the fourth line of the piece are exactly the same as the first and second line of the piece, which is really great for when you're learning it, because once you learn the first two lines of the piece, you've also learned the second two lines of the piece, and then there's also a couple more lines later on in the piece that aren't quite the same as the first two and second two lines of the piece, but they're very, very similar. So once you learn the first two lines of the piece, you've learned actually a decent amount of the piece, which is kind of convenient for learning the piece. Again, we've got the two grace notes there, the C down to B, we've got the E up to F. You'll probably recognize all of this as being the same. It changes over here to the C minor chord for a little bit, goes back to the F minor chord. So these two lines are literally exactly the same as the first two lines that I've showed you in the piece, which is really, really convenient. So let me show you the very last line of the piece, and then we will move on to the second page. So this right here is the very last line of the piece. We just saw the second to last line there in a minute ago, but this is the very last line, not of the piece, but of this first page here that we're looking at. I said the piece, but I meant the first page. So this is the last line of the first page, and as you can see, its stuff will change here. We now have a B flat minor chord here instead of the F minor we had before, but it goes back to F minor right there, and we also have a grace note on literally every single note of the measure there. So again, you're going to want to get used to playing these grace notes and knowing how to play them well in order to play this piece, because if you're playing the first note of the grace note too loud, it will sound bad, like I said earlier. Now this down here is a tie, because we're meant to play this F for a very long time and just hold it. So these notes don't have grace notes because they're simply tied onto the F, because you want to play this F here and then hold it for the rest of the measure. But literally every single new melody note is going to have a grace note as well. And the left hand pattern is the same kind of rhythmic pattern we've had before. It does have the new chord there with the B flat minor, but everything else here is pretty much the same. There's nothing new that has been added to the piece that I really have to explain. So let's take a look now at the second page of the piece. So this here is the first line of the second page of the piece, and as you can see, it looks just like the last line of the first page that we just looked at. We've got the B flat minor chord, we've got the F minor chord for the second half of the measure, and then up top we have every single note of the melody line being a grace note except for the two ties of the F. So that's just another example of where this piece will repeat, and it actually repeats again twice again on the same page, which is very convenient again for actually learning the piece. So because once you learn one line, you've actually learned a bunch of lines of the piece. This line here actually repeats twice again on this page, and then the second line that you see here repeats once more on the page, which is really cool. Now this second line of the second page here is where we also have an extra long measure. This one here is 24 beats over 4, which is 24 beats in the measure with the quarter note getting the beat, which is kind of crazy. But what's kind of interesting here is we have it's nothing really really like crazy new that we've seen, but it is a new little motif in the piece, which is this little scale run here that is played over the F minor chord. It has a really cool sound, and it's basically, like I said, just the C major scale. We've got C, we've got D, we've got E, we've got F, we've got G, and then it jumps up to B, and then it comes back down to G, and then plays F. So it's just kind of cool. It's something else that happens in the piece, but it's nothing really like new that I have to explain how to do. It's just something new that happens in the piece, so I thought I'd mention it. We've also got more grace notes that kind of hop down, which this is something you'll have to remember if you want to memorize the piece, especially. You have to remember exactly what notes these will land on, because when you're playing it, it feels like there's more than there should be. I mean, there are 24 beats to the measure, but when you're playing this, it kind of feels like there's more notes than there should be. But they're all, they're grace notes. We've seen them all before. There's no new what's the word I'm looking for? There's no new techniques here in the piece that we haven't seen already in the piece or in other music I've taught on the channel. So this is the second line of the piece. So let's take a look at the third and fourth lines of the piece. So this is the third line of the piece, and as you can see, it looks exactly like the second line of the piece. So this line here is an entire repeat of the line that we just looked at. You can see we got the C major scale run, and then a bunch of grace notes kind of going down the scale, going down the keyboard in the right hand, and then another tie on the F at the end. So this line is exactly the same as the line we just looked at, which again is great because once you know this line, you know a number of different lines in the piece. And once again, this line down here, which is the second to last line of the piece, is an exact repeat of the first line of the second page here. So basically this line, once you know this line, which occurred several times by now, once you know this line, you know a number of different lines of the piece. The very last line here on the second page is exactly the same as this line. So I'm just going to skip over that and let's move on to the third page of the piece. So this here is the first line of the third page of the piece, and basically what we have here is a very similar motif to the very first line of the piece. Now this is a little bit different from the first line, but it is a very, very similar sound and a very similar feel. So again, if you know the first line of the piece, playing this line as well as the second line of the piece will be very, very easy. It's very similar. There were two grace notes here before in the very first line of the piece. There was one here, and then the second one that came in between this chord and that chord. That grace note is not here, and then also over here is the E going up to the F. There was a second one that came in between this chord and that chord. It was up here. So there's only one grace note in the right hand melody instead of two. So that's a little bit different. And then also this second line here is slightly different. There's no two grace notes. And I think there's also a little part missing there with that C minor chord. That part seems to be missing here. But it's very similar to the first couple of lines of the piece. So if you know those well, then you will know these lines very well. And you just have to kind of remember the slight changes that are made here. But playing these pieces, playing these measures and learning them for the first time will be very, very easy. Let's take a look here at the third line of the measure now. I said third line of the measure, I meant third line of the page, and this here is the third line of the page. It's very, very similar to the lines that we've already seen before. By now you'll probably recognize it, but the only difference here is that there is no grace note on the very first B flat of the measure. Everything else though is exactly the same as the lines that we've seen before, which starts off with the B flat minor chord and then the F minor chord in the second half of the measure. And this line is exactly the same as this one, except this time we have a grace note there. So this is another one of those lines that repeats multiple times through the piece. And the very last line of the piece is that measure with the C major run over the F minor chord. We've seen it multiple times, so I don't think I need to show it to you. It's exactly the same as we've already seen in the piece. So let me show you the first couple of lines of the last page of the piece, and then I'll get around to showing you how it works on the keyboard. So here are the last three lines of the piece, the Gnossienne number 1 by Erik Satie. And as you can see here, we have that C major run over the F minor chord again. The previous line of the piece, which is the one I skipped over, that one has this one. That previous line looked exactly like this one, so I figured I'd show this one to you again. We've already seen it before multiple times in the piece, but this is what it looks like. And then you'll recognize these two lines from earlier in the piece as well. The measure that has half of it being the B flat minor chord and then half of it being the F minor chord. We've seen these lines multiple times already in the piece. So again, for the final time here, if you know one line of the piece, you know a decent amount of the piece here. And this is actually where the piece will end. It actually ends kind of abruptly. It just kind of ends on the F minor chord, which is right here, and then you just want to hold it for a very long time, and then the piece is over. So now that I've walked you through the sheet music, again, there's going to be a download link for it in the description, so if you don't have a version of the sheet music yourself and you want to learn this piece, you can go and download that version of the sheet music, print it out just like I have here, and you will see it exactly as I see it, but in your own hands at home, which will be great for practicing. But now let me actually walk you through the piece and show you exactly how to play it. So here we are at the piano keyboard. So what I'm going to do is walk you through the Erik Satie piece, and I'm going to show you exactly what chords to play and exactly what fingers to play. But an interesting note about the fingering is there's a number of different variations of the fingering, and this piece is a slow piece, and it gives you a lot of time to really choose what finger you want to put on the piece. And I use a different fingering than what I like to use here in this piece. Don't worry about it. The piece gives you a lot of time to choose what fingers to use, and so if you want to use a slightly different finger, like if you want to use 3 on a certain note instead of 4, that's probably totally fine because this piece is really slow. And in a quick piece, it's really important to use the exact right fingering, but in a really slow piece like this, you can take a few liberties with the fingering and use something a little bit different than normal if you really prefer that fingering. But this piece starts off here with our F down here with our pinky in the left hand, and we play that like so. And then we want to jump up here to an F minor triad like so. That's A flat, C, and F played at the same time like that. That is our left hand pattern, and the left hand rhythm pattern I don't think actually changes throughout the whole piece, and that pattern is kind of like this. It kind of has the rhythmic pattern that's a little bit faster than the piece is actually performed, but that's kind of the rhythmic pattern that is played throughout this whole piece, and I don't think that that rhythmic pattern actually changes once in the whole piece, which is kind of neat. But what we want to do here is, as we play that F minor triad, what we want to do is play C. I like to use my middle finger up here in the right hand at the same time we play that triad, so like this. Then in the right hand, we want to go to E flat, and then we want to come back down to D, and then we want to play F minor and C at the same time again, just like so. Then we want to move on to the first grace note of the piece, which I like to change my middle finger here to my 4th finger, and then do the grace note with my 4th finger and my middle finger like so. Like that. And then as you notice, we went back down here to F. We want to come back up and play the F minor, like so. So we want to play that grace note, play F minor again, play the grace note again, and then play F minor again. Then you want to jump back down to F, and play that same motif that we played earlier, which is this. Like so. And then we want to play F minor and C again. And then instead of going down to B, what we want to do is replace that middle finger on C with our thumb and then reach up to F as we play the F down in the bottom. Like so. And that is the first measure and the first line of the piece. Now, one thing I wanted to mention about the first line here of the piece, as well as many other times in the piece, is that you don't have to do that finger change thing that I did there, where I had the C, I changed it to my thumb, and then went up to the F. You could just go from C to F, but I like to do the finger change to my thumb because it kind of helps root where I was before in the piece, and kind of connect it to the next part in the piece, and also allows me to hold that C longer as well, and make it more legato, which this whole section of the piece is legato. So if you had a small little break there from where you hop, it wouldn't be quite as legato as if you played that C, replace it with your thumb, and then go straight into the grace. Now, that's just one note I wanted to make about the first line of the piece. It happens a lot of times in the piece. I like to do those little finger changes that really help kind of connect the piece together, but if you don't want to do those, or if you don't like doing them, if you make it uncomfortable, you don't have to do those in this particular piece. So let's move on to the second line of the piece, which is going to sound very, very familiar here. The very first part of the measure goes like this, which sounds familiar. We've already seen it before. We want to change that C to our 4th finger, like I like to do, and then go to the grace note. But now stuff starts to change. I like to change this B with our middle finger to my 4th finger now, and then go to another grace note, which is down here on A flat, and then goes to G. Like that. So this first half of the measure of the second line goes like this. Like that. And in fact, if you wanted to do a different fingering there on that G, you could use your 4th finger on the A flat and then your middle finger on the G, and then the next part of the piece would be very, very easy because you can just go, the next part of the piece after you play the F minor chord again here, has a grace note that goes from F up to G, and this is also where you want to play a G minor triad in the left hand. So you want to play a C down here, like that, and then you want to play C minor, like so, just like that. So this part of the measure goes like this. Play C minor again. Then you want to go up to A flat and then come back down to G as you play F in the left hand, like that, and then you want to play F minor and F in the right hand, and that's also a grace note there, like so. Then you just kind of go down to F, play F minor again, play it again, and then we want to move on to the third line of the piece, which goes like this. So the third line of the piece is actually exactly the same as the first line of the piece, like I showed you earlier when we were looking at the sheet music. So that would go like this. And the fourth line here of the first page is going to sound exactly like the second line of the piece that we've already looked at, which goes like this. Now at the end of this video, I'm going to be playing this piece all the way through with the metronome really nice and slow, so you can really get a good idea of how the timing on this piece works. Again, the time signature is kind of weird. It's 16/4, 20/4, and then in a few measures here, we're going to get into a couple of measures that are 24/4, which is 24 beats per measure, and then with the quarter note getting the beat. So again, at the end of the video, I'm going to play it through nice and slowly with the metronome, just to kind of give you guys an idea of how it should sound. So now let's take a look at the last line of the first page of the music, which is going to be a little bit different from what we've already looked at in the piece. What we're going to want to do is we're going to want to start off in the right hand on A flat and do a grace note up to B flat, like so, at the same time that we want to play this B flat in the left hand. This is the lowest note of the piece, in case you're curious, that low B flat. Then you want to jump up to a B flat minor triad up here, like so. So this first little bit is going to sound like this. Then you want to jump from A, you don't really do a jump, but you want to kind of do a grace note from A flat down to G, then play B flat minor again, then do the A flat to B flat thing again, like that, then go from A flat to G, just like so. Then you want to change your left hand chord, which is going to be F now, and you want to do the A flat to G flat grace note again, like so, and then you want to go from G to F, as you play an F minor triad again, like we were earlier in the piece. So that last line of the first page of the piece goes like this. I'm going to play it through nice and slow. Again, I'll play it all the way through with the metronome at the end, but this is what this measure sounds like. So now let's take a look at the second page of the music, and the first line of the second page is actually exactly the same as the line that I just played for you. It goes exactly like the last line of the first page it goes exactly like the last line on the first page of the piece, which is really, really great for somebody learning the piece, because like I've said before in this video, once you know one line of the piece, you already know a lot more of the piece. So the first line of the second page goes like this. I'll just play it through again for you, more at the full tempo. That is how the first line of the second page should sound. Now, the second line here of the second page is going to be a little bit different, so let's take a look at that. So the second line here of the second page has a new motif here, and that is the C major scale that's played over the F minor chord. So what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to play F, and then in between playing this F and the F minor chord, we're going to want to play a C in the right hand, like so, and then we're going to want to play a D in the right hand as we play this chord, like so. We're going to want to play E, going to want to tuck our thumb under to F, and then play G, and then reach up to B with either a pinky or a fourth finger. I like fourth finger, like that. And then we're going to want to come back down to G, and then we're going to want to play two Fs together, like so. Then we're going to want to do a grace note from this G down to the F, like that. Play F minor again. Then we're going to want to play another grace note just like that. Then we're going to do another grace note down to E, play F minor again, play a grace note from D flat to C, like that. Then we're going to want to do a grace note from C to B natural, like that. Then we're going to want to do a grace note from A flat down to G, and then do one from G to F. and play that F triad at the same time we play that F again. It's like this. And then play F again, and then this triad again. And that is the second line of the second page of the music. Now, the third line of the second page of the music is exactly the same as the second line. So let me play that through for you. Now let's take a look at the fourth line of the second page. The fourth line of the second page actually goes exactly like a line that we've already looked at before, and that was the one that has the B flat down here in the bass, and then you want to come out here and play a B flat minor triad. This line, the fourth line of the second page, is exactly like that other line we've already looked at, which was the last line of the first page. So I'm going to play that through for you. And what's cool is the last line of the second page is that same line exactly over again, which is really fantastic. I'm going to play it through once more for you. So now let's take a look at the first line of the third page of the music. The first line of the third page of the music is very, very similar to the first line of the first page of the music, except it's a little bit slightly different. What we want to do is play F down here in the bass as we play, and then we want to play the F minor triad up here as we play C in the right hand. Go up to E flat, come down to D, play F minor and C again. Then we want to do a grace note on to B natural as we play F down here again, just like so. Then we want to play F minor again, play it again. Then we want to play this. But as you notice there in the right hand, there wasn't a second grace note. Before in the first line of the music, we had a second grace note there in between those two F minor triads. It went like this. But now that second grace note there isn't there anymore. It's just empty space in the right hand. So the first line of the piece goes like this. Nothing in the right hand here. That's the first half of the first line, and then the second half of the first line of the third page goes like this. Go up to F this time, and again, there's no second grace note. Just don't play anything here. Play a second F minor chord, and then that is the end of the first line of the third page. So the second line of the third page of the music is exactly like the first line of the third page of the music, which is absolutely fantastic. Now the third line and the fourth line here of the third page are going to be that low B flat line that we've already talked about, where it goes like this. Recognize that? The next two lines are going to be that line, so what I'm going to do is just play that line through twice nice and slowly, and then we're going to move on to the last line of the third page. Again, this is the second to last line of the piece. I mean, not of the piece, of the third page. But we're getting close to the end of the piece. Now the last line here of the third page of the music is going to be that one where we play F minor in the left hand, but we want to play C major in the right hand. So that's going to sound like this, and we play this line twice because if we play the last line of the third page is that line, and then the first line of the fourth page is also that line, so it repeats twice. And then again, this is going to be the first line of the fourth page of the music. From here, we are ready to move on to the last two lines of the music, which are going to be that low B flat line again. We want to play low B flat down here. As you play that grace note in the right hand, come out to play a B flat minor, try it up here. Then go down to G. In the right hand, play B flat again, like this. We've already talked about this already. We've seen it a number of different times. It goes like that. Then we want to play it again. This is the last line of the music. And that is the end of the piece. Now when you play it through at the full tempo, that ending is a little bit abrupt if you don't do a little bit of a slowdown at the end, which is called the ritardando. So what you'd probably want to do when you're playing through the piece at the full tempo, which isn't much faster than I'm playing it here, is you probably want to just gently slow down at the very, very end of the piece just to kind of ease into that very sudden stop there, because you're kind of expecting the song to continue, but instead it just ends on that F minor chord. So you'd probably want to do a very gentle ritardando there to kind of slow down and just kind of end the piece very gently. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to play the piece all the way through at a nice slow speed. I'm choosing 56 on my metronome, actually. Yeah, 56 on my metronome, because I think that's a nice slow speed. It's a little bit slower than it's actually supposed to be performed, because the goal here of playing it slow with the metronome for you guys on the video is not to show you how it's supposed to be played all the way through. Well, kind of. But if you want to hear how it's supposed to be performed, I have a performance video of it out on my channel. But if you just want to play along with it here and to kind of get an idea of how it's supposed to be played nice and slow with the metronome, if you don't have your own metronome at home, this section of the video might be a great way to practice on it. And also it can help give you an idea of how the timing is supposed to work on this piece. I'm going to be playing it like it's supposed to be performed with the metronome, which is each tick of the metronome being a quarter note of the piece. So that is one thing I wanted to mention there, is every quarter note here of every click of the metronome is corresponding to one quarter note here of the piece. So I'm playing it at the proper tempo in a way. It's just a little bit slower than it's supposed to be played. I'm also going to be announcing when I move on to each page in the music, because the piece does repeat a lot and it would get kind of confusing and disorienting. Where are you in the piece right now? I have no idea. You could be on the first page, you could be on the last page. So what I'm going to be doing is announcing when I move on to the second, the third, and the fourth pages. Of course, I'm going to be starting off with the first page, but I wanted to announce when I move on to the second, third, and fourth pages, just to kind of give you guys an idea and give you guys a way to track where I am in the piece. Here's the first line of the second page. third line of the piece. Third page, I mean. Here's the fourth page of the piece. Oops. So hopefully you guys enjoyed hearing the piece being played all the way through with the metronome. Again, the idea of that wasn't so much for you to be able to hear what it's supposed to be like when you perform it. I have a performance video out on the channel if you're interested in seeing that. But this, I was just kind of gonna, it was just supposed to give you an idea of how the timing is supposed to work. When you play it through as a performance, you can kind of take some liberties and slow down and speed up ever so slightly and gently. But when you want to practice it with the metronome, which is what this is supposed to demonstrate, it would just kind of give you an idea of how the timing works. Because even though the time signatures in the piece are really weird, like I said, 16/4 or 24/4, even though the time signatures are weird, the timing itself in the piece is actually very simple, and you could hear this timing in a standard 4/4 timing piece. So the timing in this piece is very straightforward and simple, so I wanted to play it through with the metronome just to kind of demonstrate that the timing itself is simple, even though the time signatures are really pretty wacky. So again, hopefully you enjoyed hearing it played all the way through. So yeah, hope it helped. So hopefully you enjoyed this video, and hopefully you guys found it informative and helpful. If you liked it and you enjoyed this type of content, make sure to go ahead and give this video a like. And if you want, you can also go check out my channel. I've got lots of cool videos on reviews of pianos and organs and other cool keyboard instruments, as well as lots of other tutorials on Bach music. So if you like Bach, you might want to go check out those tutorials. I also have performance videos on all of them, so if you just want to listen to some cool Bach music and hear me talk about it a bit, you can. But I also do tutorials on all of them, so if you want to learn those pieces, you can go do that as well. And if you just want to go check out my channel and have fun, make sure to go ahead and do that, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.